All right, let's learn some stuff in After Effects. So today we are going to learn how to control all of these different things that you see moving on the screen with one controller. And you can see that we've got a whole number here that is being rounded up into a percentage, and we've got a bar graph, and we've got a pie chart, and all of that is being controlled by one thing. You see that we can go up to this slider, we can slide it back and forth, and wherever it ends up, it's going to fill that, go to 100, gets to 100, go down to 0, gets to 0. Okay, so let's build it. All right, so let's kick this off. I'm going to right click, I'm going to create a null object. On that null object, I'm going to have it selected. I'm going to go to Effect, Expression Controls, Slider Control. Right click on the null object again, and let's rename it. And we'll rename this Slider. Okay. Now we've got a slider here. We twirl into that. You can see that we can drag this back and forth. It changes this number. That's great. That's really all we need that for right now. So we're going to leave that alone. Let's mark this as purple. Okay, so we got our purple slider. Cool. All right, now I'm going to come in. I'm going to create a new shape layer. And this shape layer, I'm going to create a bar graph here. Let's drop this stroke down, something like that. Let's change the color to white. Okay, so I'm going to right click this. I'm going to rename this White Shapes. All right, cool. Now with that white shape selected, I'm going to choose our ellipse tool. I'm going to click and drag an ellipse like so. Okay, and then on this one, I'm going to go into my ellipse. I'm going to go into my stroke, and I'm going to increase the weight of this stroke, and I'll probably decrease the size of this ellipse path. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the middle of that thing, boom, like that. I want the middle of that stroke to seem like a fill. It's got to be a stroke, but I want it to seem like a fill. Okay, I'll show you why in a minute. Okay, so we got that, and now let's create a number. So I'm going to come in here again. Let's hit our text tool. Let's click right here, and we're just going to type number. Cool. Now that number, I'm going to twirl into that. I'm going to twirl into that. And on our source text here, I'm going to Alt-click. Okay, that's going to bring up the expression menu down here. And the reason that's important is we're going to use this pick whip in the expression menu to pick whip it to this slider. So I'm going to highlight this slider, grab the pick whip in my number, drag it up to that slider there. Boom. Now it gives me this line of code right here that basically says inside of this comp, find the layer that's named slider control and give me the number that's coming out of that, right? And you don't need to remember any of that because that is happening inside of that. Okay, we'll deal with this kind of monstrosity there, but you can see now that that number is controlled there. Cool. Okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to duplicate my white shapes by clicking on the white shapes and pressing Command D, Control D on a PC. I'm going to right click again. I'm going to rename. Let's call these yellow shapes this time. Now that we've got our yellow shapes, I'm going to select this. Let's go into contents here. Let's select our ellipse, go into the stroke, and we're going to grab this color. Okay, do the same with our shape. Go into the stroke again, and we're going to grab this color. Great. Okay. Now here's the trick. I'm going to click on Contents, I'm going to click on Add, and I'm going to go down to Trim Paths. Okay, now a trim path is just going to like shorten up one side or the other of a stroke, right? And so I'm going to go to here like this. It's going to add trim paths here, twirl into this. You can see that I can go down or up on the end, right? Or I can go down or up in the beginning. Okay, we're just going to do the end right now. So once again, Alt-click to open up the expression menu, come down, click on our slider so that shows up here, and then I'm going to pick whip the end of the trim paths on the contents to that slider. Okay, now if you get caught, this is kind of important. We're going to click out of this. You can see that it kind of lines up with that, and wherever I put this, it gives us that percentage. That's great. Okay, this trim paths, sometimes it'll want to show up inside of one of these shapes if you had those shapes selected when you did the add. That's why I clicked on Contents and then pressed the add. If it goes anywhere else, you can just click it and drag it, right? But it's got to be at the bottom of all of your shapes. Okay, so what's happening here, just let me show you so we can see what's going on. I'm just going to grab this whole thing. You can see that they're just lined up because we made a duplicate of it, right? And they just kind of trim that out. Cool. So we got that. Let's fix this number now. Okay. And let's go back into our source text. We've got this nice big long code here that's telling us to go get that slider that's up there. That's great. Okay. But we want to round this out. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make a variable. And this variable can be any letter. I'm just going to say, let's call it n for number. So I'm going to say n equals. Okay. And then at the end of this, I'm going to put a semicolon to say that's the end of that line of code, okay? And then down here, I'm going to do an expression that will round this number up. I'm going to say math dot round, and then inside of that round, I'm going to put the letter n, okay? Now, if I click away here like this, you'll see that it gets rid of all those decimals, and it's just a nice round number now. So that's pretty sweet, but I'm not done yet because I want to add something at the end. I want to add the percentage sign so that we know that it's a percent. So I'm going to press space plus space, and I'm going to press quotes. And inside of that quote, I am going to put the percentage sign. Okay. And when I click out of that again, you can say that. I can add anything I want. Anything I want inside of those quotes, and it's just going to add it to the end. But right now, I just want those percentages. Great. Okay. So I'm going to click out of there. And now when I go up and down with the slider, that's wonderful. So that's pretty much where most people would stop. I'm going to do one more thing where I'm going to have this fill up with yellow based on the percent that the slider is at, okay? So I'm not going to make another copy of this number layer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of these, but I'm going to make it really thick, okay? So I'm going to click out of there again. I'm going to go back to my pen tool here. I'm going to click on the bottom, hold shift, click on the top. Okay, it's going to give me this white. I'm going to grab this. Let's just make it red for fun. And I'm going to make that really wide. Wide enough that if it hits triple digits, it's not going to be outside of that. Okay, then I'm just going to do the same thing here. I'm going to go into contents here. I'm going to click add, and we'll go trim paths. Okay, on that trim path, I'm going to alt click on the end. Okay, I'm going to click on our slider again. Pick whip that slider one more time, okay? And you can see now that when I click out of that, okay, that goes up and down as well. That's great. And so now all we need to do is come in here. I might need to hit toggle switches and modes once or twice to make sure I get my track mat up. And on this, let's name this so we know what we're talking about. We'll call this red, okay? And I'm going to take the pick whip for the track mat, and I'm going to pick whip this number. Okay, and now when I go back to that slider, okay, it goes up and down, and the whole number kind of fills up with red. Wherever there's red, okay, it kind of shows up in that number. That's great, but I don't want that number to disappear. And so here's the little trick. When you make something a track mat, it automatically hides it. So I'm just going to turn it back on. Okay, so just right over here, over in the corner, you can just toggle these on or off. They just turn them on or off like that. And then I can come in here like this, and I can have it all controlled. One more fun thing that you can do, I can alt-click on the slider control. Okay, and inside of this, I can do a wiggle expression. Let's go wiggle, and let's say 0.7 times per second. Why don't you move 50 percentage points? Okay, and now without me moving anything at all, it'll just kind of just randomly generate a number there. I'm going to move that slider into the middle here. So we'll just do that, and it's going to start at 50, and then it'll just go up or down. Okay, so that's cool. The other thing that we could do is I can get rid of this wiggle expression like that. I can turn the slider animation on. Okay, and I can move this over, and I can say at 5 seconds, let's go from 0, and we'll go up a little bit. Let me zoom in so we can see what we're doing. Let's have this take about half a second. So about half a second. I want you to overshoot the number. Let's say it's 50%. So I'm going to hit like 57. We'll go a little bit more. Let's go down just under something like that. And just a couple more frames. And then we'll just type in the exact number that we want. Okay. And then let's watch that happen. B and N on our keyboard to tighten that up. Let's let that render out. And it's just going to kind of like bounce and settle, right? If we want that to go a little bit better, we can come in keyframe assistant, easy ease, and it'll come in and it'll just kind of bounce and bounce, bounce. Sweet. Okay, so anything that we put into this slider, it'll control whatever you pick whip to it. And we use trim paths, We used track mats, and we duplicated some layers. If you were a little lost because I was going pretty fast, I go a little bit slower and a lot more step-by-step. In my beginners playlist, AI to AE, how to take your knowledge of Adobe Illustrator and translate it to Adobe After Effects so that you can make things in Adobe Illustrator and make them move in Adobe After Effects. Check this out. Get in my email newsletter, corykerr.com/email. Subscribe, ring the bell, all that jazz. We will see you guys next time. Go make stuff.